Hey everyone, it's Rob, and thanks for listening in today. As always, I greatly appreciate your time. My guest today is Don Lupo. Don shares with us that he's had four crowning achievements in his life. The first was as a 12-year-old walking to the altar and asking for God's forgiveness and blessing. So that tells you a little bit about his mindset and his faith. The second is a combination of the dates 1982 and 1991 when his two children were born, Donald and Alexandra, the greatest gifts he's ever received, he shared. But professionally in 1999, the then mayor of Birmingham, Alabama, Bernard Kincaid, gave him the opportunity to come to City Hall from his clothing business, where he brought in high-end clothing to the city of Birmingham, Alabama. And he went to City Hall to serve the citizens of Birmingham and was very excited to do so. A new career change for him. Now, here we are 23 years later. He's served under four elected mayors, and he's still serving the city. He's a 2005 graduate of the FBI Citizens Academy. He served 4 terms as president and hosted the 2016 National Leadership Conference. That's in 2016, that same year, Don was chosen as recipient of the Director's Community Leadership Award by the Director of the FBI for his community work on homelessness. He was also selected as a top 50 over 50 in the state of Alabama. He was awarded by the Red Cross as a community hero for work done during many hurricanes and tornadoes. And in 2018, the Birmingham Police Department awarded Don their highest honor given to a civilian, the Civilian Service Medal. Don attended Samford University, and he was a religious studies major. Now, while he didn't think his studies would ever be put to formal use, he does believe that we are all fishers of men, and that whatever profession we take on, we have the opportunity to bait the hook. Don currently serves on the board of the Firehouse Ministries, the Jefferson Committee of Economic Opportunity, the Norton Board at Birmingham Southern College, the Jefferson County Emergency Management Agency. He is the state chair of Project Share, and he serves on the board of the National Veterans Day. And recently, Don served as Deputy Incident Commander for the 2022 World Games and will serve in that position for the 2025 World Police and Fire Games. Now, Don's fourth crowning achievement is that he knows almost every homeless person in Birmingham, Alabama by name. And if he doesn't know their name, they know his. Don says, hey, we are all just people trying to live with a little hope and a little dignity. There's a lot to this conversation in a short period of time. Please listen closely. Don shares a great deal of wisdom from his experiences. So I hope you enjoy my conversation with a true unsung hero, Don Lupo. And Don, hi, it's so great to see you today. Thanks for taking time to join me and chat today. You are the best.
Well, Rob, thank you. It's really an honor to be on here with you. And uh, I know the subjects that we're going to talk about are going to be, really cool things to talk about at this time of the year and, and in our lives and other people's lives.
Well, what's special about you, and I know this is not, it won't be easy for you to hear it, but you're a very humble person, and you've done many things in your career and in your life. And I'm looking forward to talking about some of those things, not all of them, we don't have time, but I just appreciate that. And I just wanted to start by saying, what a wonderful quality that is.
Well, as long as people that are listening and watching understand that, I've had some success, but none of it was by myself. I've had lots of help and lots of people surrounding me that, I have a saying that came from a movie, and that saying is that we do what we do and we do it together. So I don't do anything by myself.
I love the saying. So I have another saying, because I oftentimes start with a quote during my podcast. And this is a quote. It goes like this: "We are all inches from being homeless." And actually, you said that. Usually I look for a quote from somebody else, but I thought that was so powerful. And so I wanted to share that. And what comes to your mind when you hear those words that you've said in the past?
Well, I, those words are spoken not only from my mouth, but also from my heart. And I've never been homeless, but I know just by experiences of other people that we are inches. We're a paycheck. We're a trip to the hospital. We're, whatever it is, we are inches away from experiencing homelessness. I go to fires. I go to all sorts of stuff where people, 30 minutes before were kind of on the top of the world, and now they don't have a home. Now, the homelessness that we're talking about is, the people on the streets of our city and other cities, but they fell from somewhere. They all were at one point in their life, for the most part, sitting pretty, and one little thing took them down. One thing added to their mental problems. One thing, I can't explain it, but we're just inches.
Yeah, I think you're explaining it very well. And I'm curious in your experience with homelessness. And I need to say before I get into that you actually serve as part of the team at the city of Birmingham, Alabama. We'll get more into that in a moment. So homelessness is not your job per se, but what is happening in many, many cities across the country with this challenge that these folks are experiencing, these other humans that are just like us. And what comes to mind for you is around what the best ways to help are?
Well, I mean, so many of the problems are mental illness, and we need more people helping in that vein. We need more clinical, and I'm not a psychologist. I really don't have any expertise at all, Rob. And so I'm going to throw some things out here, and they may be right and they may not be right. But I just think that, if we had a little more that clinical type analysis and practice on the streets, if there were more facilities where people could get more help, and there is a lot of help out there. That I don't want to indicate that there's not, but we need more. And a lot of people, for whatever reason, don't want to go into a shelter, and there are many, many reasons that they don't. Some valid and some that I don't think are valid. But a lot of that hesitancy comes from their mental capacity, their mental illness. And we just need more help in that vein. We need more addiction and recovery facilities where someone can go and get help. We also need those places that aren't going to charge an arm and a leg, because so many of our friends on the streets, they may get a check, but a lot of them don't get a check. So what happens if you can't pay? And those are the things that we're trying to get in Birmingham, and some of our shelter situations are offering those programs, and hopefully we're making some strides.
Yeah. I'm curious for yourself, what do you feel sort of deep in your soul is the reason that you feel so connected to people that are homeless?
I think I shared with you at some point, I'm 16 years old and my sister's 12, and our mom passed away. She was 36, and this vibrant, beautiful, had the voice of a bird, just, a lovely, lovely person. And before she passed away, she asked us at dinner one night if we felt like we were going to be taken care of if something happened. And she bought some insurance, not leaving it to us, but leaving it to Christ Mission in Decatur, Alabama. And that money served as seed money for the mission to buy a bigger building and do great work. 50 something years later, they're still in business and still doing the work. That example has led me and my sister to where we are today. We had someone in our life that loved us unconditionally. But in addition, that same person loved other people too. And when one day I got a envelope from a friend that now lives down in Florida, and on the back of the envelope, he had written, "Love thy neighbor, feed the hungry, clothe any that are naked." What else do you need to hear? That was kind of my like slap in the face, like, okay, somebody's talking to me. And I posted on Facebook yesterday. There was a picture of His Holiness the Dalai Lama taking my hands in his hands, and I said that there were 2 times in my life that I felt total peace and understanding. One was the morning that I found my mom dead on the couch, and I will never forget, as long as I live, I literally just raised up my hands and I looked at the ceiling in our house, and I had a conversation with God. And my question to him was, what next? And Rob, there was no bolt of lightning. There was no, there was no voice from the heavens. There was no thunder roll. There was nothing, man, except this peace and understanding. Mm. When His Holiness took my hands between his hands, that was the second moment that I just felt, man, I mean, there's this peace like none other, and that there's an understanding. I don't know if, but those 2 moments in my life are those shining moments that I'm going to remember forever, that have said to me, hey, you got to do what the man wrote on the back of that envelope. You got to love thy neighbor, you got to feed the hungry, and you got to clothe any that are naked. So good. Those were the wake up moments.
People often hear about peace and understanding, and they just wonder, and they in many ways want that feeling. And I'm curious, for those that feel that way, what is it? What does that feel like in those, those little moments that you have it? What does it feel like?
It is a wonder. It is one of how many wonders of the world are there? 8. Well, right. I've experienced 10 now.
10, yeah.
And there's just, there's nothing like it. There's nothing like being in the grips of somebody else and them watching over you and them taking care of you. And that whatever, they got you. They've got your back. And it's a very powerful feeling to know that somebody loves you. We all want to be loved. That's right. I want to be loved. And to know that there's that person that loves you unequivocally, undeniably, unconditionally. And it is a wonder. So.
Well, following in your mother's footsteps, so to speak, in Birmingham, Alabama, you were very involved with, I believe it was the refurbishing and opening of a homeless shelter, which I think is called the Firehouse Shelter.
Yes,
Is that correct?
yes. Well, we
Talk
didn't
a little bit about
refurbish.
that. Oh, okay.
We didn't refurbish. We built a new one.
Oh, that's what it was. My bad. Yes.
The building that actually the shelter was started 40 years ago, give or take, in the basement of the First Presbyterian Church. And it was founded on a real cold night. There were 8 inebriated older white guys that were the first clients of what became the Firehouse Ministries emergency shelter. If I remember correctly, they served peanut butter and jelly sandwiches that night. Fast forward, give or take 40 years. Well, let's go 38 years. 38 years, the building that they'd been in for a number of years, they had outgrown it. It was really not in great shape. Electrically, it was terrible. The roof leaked. The kitchen was inadequate. The bathrooms were inadequate. It had so many inadequacies. We could talk the rest of the 40 minutes about that. But anyway, so the board and some people got together and we came to the city, and our mayor at the time made the commitment of $1 million toward building a new shelter. And we went about gathering the rest of the money. We were told, you'll never do it. We were told, we were just told everything. And we did it. And when it came time, our present mayor, Mayor Woodfin, lived up to the commitment for the city. And in fact, 8 years ago this week, 4 years ago this week, at a city council meeting, there were some councilors that didn't speak highly of the shelter. And in our opinion, they were misled and didn't, anyway, so they voted the money down. And the mayor, Mayor Woodfin, went to bat for the shelter. And more than that, Mayor Woodfin went to bat for the people that live on our streets. The mayor was very clear in that he thought that it was time that we did something for the least of those. And he worked his magic and got in the hearts of 9 other people. And the next Tuesday, the money was passed, and that first $1 million got us on the road. 2 years later, we built the shelter, or 2 years later, the new shelter opened. And Rob, it's really an amazing building. The first thing you do when you walk up to the building is you see a chapel. And in the window of the chapel, the way they did the window frames and everything, the frame of that window is in the shape of a cross. The building itself is now 2 years old, and even your doors at home get a little dirty, I guess, sticky fingers, whatever. You can go in that shelter today, and two plus years, there's not one scratch on the wall. The bathrooms are clean, and the people that we serve there made a commitment. Some of them said, hey, we're not going to let them tear this place up. This is our home. And that's the way they've treated it. The staff there has just been magnificent, very little turnover. COVID hits. They've got to limit, capacity in the shelter, but they never limited 1 minute of coming to work. Everybody came to work every day. If they got COVID, and some did, they stayed home 5 days and they were back on the 6th. And that's the kind of commitment that was made by the Firehouse Shelter in Birmingham. And here we are now. They're over capacity again. And 20 years ago when I got associated with them, this lady would call and she would say, Don, I don't know what we're going to serve for dinner tonight.
Jeez.
And last week, the same person told me, Don, don't bring anything else in here. We have no room. And I'm like, all right, hey, Miss D, you can't have it both ways. You cannot have it both ways. You're either empty or you're full. But, the community has really, not only with the Firehouse Shelter, but with our other shelters here in town, the community has really rallied, especially in the last 2 or 3 years with COVID and everything.
Yeah.
And they've done some amazing things to help our people on the streets.
It's so wonderful. See, during this explanation of what happened and how the firehouse got built, you mentioned Mayor Randall Woodfin, who has been a guest also on this podcast. And you shared with me that you are proud that you serve, not work, for the city of Birmingham, Alabama. And you are in the Office of Citizens Assistance, if that's correct. Talk to me about working versus serving, and then what your role is.
Well, I think people that go to work, they're only looking forward to going home. And if you serve, you not only look forward to going to work and to going home, but you look forward to tomorrow. And I must say that in the 23 years that I've worked in City Hall and the 4 mayors that I've worked for, it's been an honor. It's never gotten lost on me that I'm the one that's getting to do this. And it's never been lost on me in the last 6 years serving alongside the mayor that we have. It is the most wonderful feeling to know that yes, we're working, we've got a job to do, but we are serving those people that we are sent here to serve. Whether it's fixing a pothole or making sure the garbage is picked up on time, or making sure that people have food, bills are paid, whatever we can help with, we are serving our fellow man. One of the reasons that I hooked up with the Firehouse Shelter, and one of the reasons that I love serving in this capacity, and going back to the inches, we are truly inches away. And I know without doubt that if something were to happen to me, that I'd have a place to go. Mm-hmm. And that's important. If I had a struggle, I know that the Firehouse Shelter would take me. Yeah. Firehouse Shelter takes people, we call them wet, inebriated, off their meds, whatever. The Firehouse Shelter, if we got capacity, we take you. We'll worry about the rest of it later. And I know that hopefully, if I ever had to go knock on that door will be open. Yeah. And that is a comforting, it's a very comforting feeling, knowing that you have a place to go. Yeah.
In 2020, when I spoke with Mayor Woodfin, I believe it was the summer or fall, and there was a point, I think it was in 2020, where there was a controversial statue in the main park, and the people were trying to take it down, and he went down there. And I'm curious, you and I didn't talk about this, but as I was preparing, I was reflecting on my conversation with him, and I wondered, were you around during that time, and what do you recall from that whole situation? Because it made national news.
Actually, I was standing a few feet from him.
I wondered that, actually.
I mean, literally a very few feet. And it could have been a lot worse that night in terms of civil unrest. And here's this man that steps forward and took control and, made sure that the commitment was made and heard. Hey, let's go home. Okay. Let's don't tear up our city. And in return, in a few days, this monument, that monument, whatever, they're going to come down. They're going to be moved. And the crowd was like, okay, the mayor's never lied to us yet. So, gosh, now we don't have a fight. So let's go home.
So
and the next day, the process was started of removing the offensive monument.
Yeah.
And,
what being so close to the situation with all that energy and all those people and the various emotions that were going on, what were the emotions you were experiencing as it was unfolding?
Well, I was born and raised in the South. I was born in South Carolina, moved to Tennessee, moved to Alabama, where I've been ever since. I'm not Black. I haven't experienced some things that some people have experienced. Never, not ever in my life. So to sit here and to say that, I really can't do that, Rob. I've led a very, I've led a great life.
Yeah.
And I've never had people look down on me about my skin color.
Right.
I've never had someone say a off-color word to me. And that has certainly happened to others. And, we were taught as children, wrong is wrong and right is right. And that's wrong. I don't care how you cut it. I don't care. It's wrong. And we are not put here to treat our fellow man in that way. I feel sure, I'm born and bred in the South. I feel sure I know I had relatives that fought in the Confederate Army. There's no question I did. But we are, those of us that have had the privilege of travel and the privilege of serving and the privilege of the life that we live today, it's wrong. And that's the only way I can explain it. There is no right in wrong. And that behavior is wrong.
Did you at any moment, as Mayor Woodfin was speaking to the crowd, I've watched the video many times, did you ever feel as though you were witnessing some sort of history in front of you in terms of—
There was no question. There was no question that we not only were witnessing a change, look, I worked here 23 years and I haven't worked here to make the place worse. I work here, I serve here with other people to make the place better. And when he took that bullhorn and walked into that angry crowd, and if you've watched it, the people weren't happy. and he had that bullhorn and he walked into that angry crowd. And to begin with, we were a little bit afraid for him.
Yeah.
And I mean, physically afraid for him.
Just watching it, even though I knew what happened, I was afraid for him.
And then when he got on that bullhorn and talked the angry crowd, he did talk them down, and he talked some sense to them, and what he said made sense.
Yeah.
And he said, we don't have the right equipment out here tonight. We can't move this thing tonight. you'll be here all night. You're not going to tear this thing down. What are you going to do? Chip at it with a knife and fork? Give me a couple of days.
Yeah.
And he lived up to his word.
Yeah, he did.
And he more than anything in the years that I've lived here, that night to me served as the biggest change in the 52 years that I've lived here.
Amazing.
It was a step in the right direction. And not only the promise, but then the action. So, all of us can make promises.
That's right.
But you got to do something about what you say.
That's right.
And he lived up to his word.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to embarrass you for a minute. You were recognized in 2016 as a top 50 over 50 years old for the entire state of Alabama. The same year, you were recognized by the director of the FBI with the Director's Community Leadership Award for your work with the homelessness. And I'm just curious, and I know how humble you are, but when you reflect on these moments of this, with this type of recognition, what comes to mind for you?
When if there was something that I could do, I would love, I would really like my mom to have been there at those things. And she wasn't. When you're in the FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C., and you're standing on the steps and people are surrounding you. I looked, Gary Sinise was standing behind me. I was standing next to Tom Osborne, Nebraska, I'm in a room where literal civil rights icons, civil rights stalwarts are in this room, and they're, and I don't know if I can say this on this, but my only thought going through my head was, what in the hell are you doing here?
Surreal.
Because I just never put myself, I never thought about that. I never put myself in that vein.
Yeah.
When you get up and you're in a big, huge ballroom and you have to walk up to the front of the room to accept this thing for being top 50 over 50. Well, to begin with, that was kind of discouraging because
you're
now you're getting old. So but to think that somebody thinks that you're one of the top 50 in the entire state of Alabama, and that's pretty earth shattering. The stuff that the accolades that have come my way are things that I'm so appreciative of. As long as people understand, I didn't get there by myself. I've got hundreds of people that help me every day. I go on Facebook, and I'll never forget my daughter called me one day and she said, "Dad, you need to get on Facebook." And I'm like, "Alex, I'm too old. I don't want to be on Facebook." She said, "But Dad, you could use it." And I'm like, "Alex, I really don't want it." And she said, "What do you need?" And I said, "Well, I need 1,500 toothbrushes by Saturday." And she said, "I'm coming over right now. I'm going to set you up a Facebook page, and you're going to tell people you need 1,500 toothbrushes." She was over in about 30 minutes. 45 minutes later, I put out there that I needed 1,500 toothbrushes. 3 days later, I had 3,000. I go on Facebook and I tell people what we need, and they bring it. People want to be good. People want to help. People want somebody, they don't want to be they don't want to be the ugly face in the big mouth. They want me to be the ugly face in the big mouth, but they'll do it.
Yeah.
And I get all the credit. You know, people pat you on the back and they're like, man, you're doing such great work. I didn't do a rip roaring thing. I went on Facebook and said I needed 1,500 toothbrushes. All those people brought 3,000. Yeah. I didn't buy a toothbrush. Mm-hmm. It's an amazing feeling when you can make a change and you can see things changing around you, and just to know, and I mean, in my case, to know how many people help me every day.
Yeah.
Because truly, I really do not do anything by myself. Mm-hmm. I've got what I've got because of other people. Yeah. I do what I do because of other people. I'm so thankful for those people, and I'm, people ask me all the time, man, the day you found your mom dead, that had to be terrible. Well, it was. I mean, there's no question. It was awful. All these years later, all I've got is this picture of this beautiful, vibrant woman. I don't have to watch her decline. My sister and I count our blessings every day. We had a mom that was fantastic. And yeah, she was taken way too soon. But what she gave us during the time that she was alive is a lot more important than all the stuff that she could have given us along the road. Mm-hmm. Meeting people that I've been able to meet, places that I've been able to go, things I've seen, those things have shaped, who I am, who I aspire to be. I love several years ago when Matthew McConaughey won the Best Actor Award. If y'all haven't seen that speech that he gave at the Academy Awards, you got to watch that speech, because he said, he's always chasing something, and the person that he's chasing is his hero, because he wants to be his hero. And he figured out one day, I'm never going to get there. I'm always going to be chasing. And that's the way I feel. I don't want to get there. I don't want to get there. Yeah. I want to just keep striving to get there, keep chasing. And that person out there 10 years from now, then I'll find it, 10 years down the road, and just keep chasing, keep living. So.
Yeah. We'll conclude here, because at the beginning, before we started recording, you reminded me, and I had some questions about this, but you reminded me that 8 years ago today was a pretty impactful day for the city of Birmingham, but also for you. So what was going on that day?
Well, let's back up 2 days. 8 years ago, 3 days ago, would have been a Friday in Birmingham, and a plane landed from Vancouver, and that plane was carrying His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And we had made arrangements for the Dalai Lama to come to Birmingham and to speak over the course of the weekend. And then the next day, we had a big thing down at the University of Alabama, Birmingham. And that's where the Dalai Lama took his hands and cradled my hands. And there's a fabulous picture floating around that you can't see the front of my face, you can only see the side. And it looks like I've just got this huge grin on my face, and I'm so happy. And I was grinning and I was happy. But what you couldn't see was the tears running down my face. And then 8 years ago today, we were in Regents Field, the home of the Birmingham Barons, and thousands of people came from all over to see His Holiness the Dalai Lama speak. And it was one of those moments. And every once in a while people will say, well, it was the Dalai Lama. It wasn't God. It wasn't Jesus. And my reaction to them is, well, just tell me one thing that the Dalai Lama said that Jesus didn't say. That the Dalai Lama only tells people to love people, take care of people, do right by people. Isn't that what Jesus said? And I'm not comparing one to the other. Lots of people have that message. And I told you what Bob Boffa wrote on the back of that envelope that time, and that's been years. And my Facebook posts always end in love thy neighbor, feed the hungry, clothe any that are naked. And that's not exactly biblical, but it gets the message out.
That's right.
So but I just believe that we're all put here for a purpose. And we have to find our purpose. Your purpose doesn't have to be my purpose. My purpose doesn't have to be your purpose. But we're all here for a reason. And once we find that reason, and it, I told you earlier in our conversation, I spent most of my adult life in the men's clothing business. And I'm privileged to have brought most of the Italian designer clothing to Alabama for the very first time. Armani, Canigliani, Canali, Hugo Boss, Ferragamo, Todd. I brought all that to Alabama. And then one morning I woke up and it was just like I fell out of the bed and bumped my head. And I thought, I've done this all these years. I'm 48 years old. It's time to go do something else. And while I really was serving, I felt like I was serving, but now it's time to go serve in a different way. And 23 years ago, Mayor Kincaid hired me, Mayor Langford kept me, Mayor Bell kept me, and now Mayor Woodfin has kept me. And we just keep serving.
That's so great. You shared a story when His Holiness the Dalai Lama was visiting and he was getting ready to leave. And could you share that story?
Oh, yeah, that is truly one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen in my life. It happened on a Monday morning, and actually it would be 8 years ago tomorrow. So 8 years ago tomorrow was a Monday. So we go down to the Westin to tell His Holiness goodbye. And there are hundreds of people. They have lined the streets. Everybody wants to tell him goodbye. And we are literally right by the elevator. And he comes off the elevator and he goes straight to Mayor Bell. And then he goes to April Odom. And then he comes to me. And he's shaking our hands and giving us a little blessing. And he, out of the corner of his eye, saw a lady in a wheelchair hooked up to an oxygen machine. And this woman had someone with her that was pushing her, to get her in the building and everything. And he dropped us like a sack of potatoes and made a beeline straight for this lady. And what we saw next was one of the most incredible, it's one of those moments that you got in your brain that never goes away. He leans over to her and put his forehead on her forehead, and they have this conversation. Now, this woman is wheelchair bound, on oxygen. She turns to her person and said, "Get me up." And His Holiness says, no, it's okay. It's okay. I can bend over. And she turned back and she said, "Get me up." Her helper lifted her out of the chair, and now she and the Dalai Lama are standing forehead to forehead. There are hundreds of people there. Not that many people in the Westin, but there were a lot of people in the Westin. None of us can hear what is taking place. None of us can hear that conversation. But we all knew what was being said. And he comes back to us, he picked up the potatoes and, so he comes back to us and we're like, oh, okay, good. Okay. He finally remembered us and barely shakes our hands. And there he goes again, back to the lady again. There was a connection. There was a connection like I had on that morning and like I had when he took my hands. There was a connection. And I don't know where the lady was from. I don't know if she's alive or dead today.
Jeez.
But I'll promise you, she felt it.
Oh yeah.
She knew.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was truly one of the most moving things that I've ever seen. Mm-hmm. And the way I look at it, I don't care. Well, I mean, I do care what you believe, but I really don't care what you believe, because people can be instruments of change. People can be instruments of goodness. People can be, they can be instruments. And if you just have to allow yourself to be that instrument. Yeah. And, that's just the way Don thinks. So.
I love it. I love it. Don, thank you for sharing your wisdom with us today. I'm so grateful for your time and your humility and your service. It's truly remarkable. I just so appreciate you.
Well, I appreciate being able to do this. And of course, I know some people from Birmingham that have done this, and they are all instruments of change. Yeah. And I'm so privileged to work and serve alongside the people that I get to serve alongside, especially the mayor. Yeah. I'm privileged to know and be able to associate with some other people that you've had on, and being able to say that I've had those moments in my life where whatever the reason was, to me, is not so important as the fact that I've had those moments. Mm-hmm. And those moments in goodness and in bad and in death and whatever, those moments are the moments that I want to learn from and strive to go forward and do better. And anyway,
thank you. Thank you.
Again, that's just the way I think. Rob, thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. My pleasure. To all the wonderful, wonderful, loyal listeners, as always, I wish you much love and gratitude.